The entertaining Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to address the big news that just came out in the NFL world and expect a lot more of this. I'm actually going to have a video up on this in about a week predicting the quarterback carousel, because this year there is going to be a lot of quarterback turnover. You look at teams like the Lions, you look at teams like the Falcons, they could potentially move on from Matt Ryan. They're picking 4th overall. You look at the Saints, they may go out there and draft a quarterback. The Patriots, there are a lot of teams that will have a changing of the guard at the quarterback position, and it is official now that the Lions have come out and said that Matt Stafford will no longer be a member of the team. They will start exploring options to trade away Matthew Stafford. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how that could affect the New York Giants, both in the draft, potentially in free agency, and what teams Matt Stafford could end up with. And you guessed it, one of them is in our division. But let's jump into the quote first from Tom Pelissero. Here it is. Sources: the Lions and Matthew Stafford have mutually agreed to part ways this offseason, and the team will begin exploring trade options in the coming weeks for their star quarterback. Of course, just the year before, Matt Stafford had a terrific year with the Detroit Lions before going down with the injury. I think he had 18 touchdowns in just his first 8 games. And this year, the Lions disappointed mightily. I thought they were going to be a much better team than what they turned out to be. They decided to move on from their head coach. And now, apparently, bringing in Campbell, they want to start from scratch. And what could they get from Matt Stafford? I'm not 100% sure. He's a guy that's on the wrong side of 30. He does make a good deal of money, but I'm sure there's going to be teams out there that feel like they're in a win-now situation that would definitely give up trade capital to bring in a quarterback of his talents. After all, Matt Stafford, I think most NFL fans agree, if you just look at his talent, is a borderline top 10 quarterback in the NFL. The guy was a former number 1 overall pick. He's got a lot of talent. The Lions, really, since Calvin Johnson has left, have not provided him with much talent on that football team. They haven't had a running game pretty much his entire career, and he's not dealing with the best wide receivers there outside of Kenny Golladay, who I'm going to get a little bit more into in this video, who, of course, sustained an injury this year and only played 5 games. Stafford, of course, coming off an injury the year before that. But Matt Stafford will not be a Detroit Lion. First, I'm going to talk about some of the teams that I could see Matt Stafford potentially fitting with. Then I'm going to talk about how I think this is a very good thing, or potentially good thing, for the New York Giants regarding this draft. Some of the teams that fit Matt Stafford. One, we're going to start with the elephant in the room. That's the Washington football team. You look at that team right now, and they are a quarterback away from being a legitimate contender in the NFC East and really catapulting themselves into being the favorite in our division. You know, you look at our division right now, and really their biggest weakness, their most glaring weakness, is obviously the quarterback position. Dwayne Haskins didn't work out. Alex Smith is a shell of himself, and I think most people felt like if they were picking in the right spot, Washington probably would have drafted a quarterback this year after moving on from Haskins. Unfortunately for them, fortunately they made the playoffs, but unfortunately because of that, they will be picking 19th overall, and by then, you figure, especially with the news now about Detroit, the top quarterback prospects will be gone. A lot of people feel like 3 quarterbacks could go in the top 4, and the more quarterbacks, that go early, the less that would be there for Washington. So I don't expect Washington to sit there and wait at 19. They've got cap space. I think Washington has the 5th most cap space in football, and they're one of the few teams that could inherit the contract that Matt Stafford makes. And you look at that team right now, yeah, they definitely need to improve their offensive line, but outside of that, they've got some weapons. Terry McLaurin, they got a good young running back there in Gibson. They have a very good front 7, and they may feel by adding a quarterback like Matt Stafford, even though it would only be a Band-Aid fix, he's probably only going to be a good quarterback for another 2-3 years or so, it would help them become the odds-on favorite to win the NFC East and potentially be a contender from within the conference. I mean, you look at this conference right now. Aaron Rodgers, great quarterback. He's not getting any younger. Tom Brady, great quarterback. He's going to be 90 next year. So, Drew Brees retiring from the Saints. So Washington may look at this as an opportunity to go out there and bring in a quarterback like that and try to give themselves a real opportunity to compete in the NFC next year. Other teams where it makes sense, I think the Indianapolis Colts makes a lot of sense. The Colts, of course, have Phillip Rivers. Good chance he can move on and retire. If that's the case, they could look at Stafford as a guy that's a perfect fit. They could come in there behind a very good offensive line, a very good defense. They've got some young weapons, and he may be a guy that could get them over the top. Another team, the San Francisco 49ers, to me makes a ton of sense. They're a year removed from the Super Bowl. They've got a tremendous offensive mind there in Shanahan. It seems like they're falling out of, favor with Jimmy Garoppolo. If they could afford the contract, I'm not too sure what their cap situation is. The 49ers could make sense. And there's a number of others. The Saints have no cap, so I don't expect them. Not too sure what the Patriots cap situation is, but I'd imagine they have some. So those are just some teams I throw at you. But yeah, one team that legitimately scares me in terms of getting Stafford would be the Washington football team, because that's obviously their biggest need. So that's the bad news for the New York Giants fans. The good news, we'll start with free agency, and then we'll get into what I think is even, the real good news. Kenny Golladay. If you're Kenny Golladay now at this point, and yes, they could franchise tag him, but in a year where the cap's going to be going, probably going down, I don't think they're going to want to give him $20 million a year, whatever the franchise tag would cost for a wide receiver, especially off a year where he only played 5 games. So it's looking more and more likely that Kenny Golladay will hit the open market. If you're Golladay, are you going to sit there and want to play for the fourth quarterback more than likely that's going to be coming off the board in this year's draft? I don't think so. I think Golladay will test the market, and Golladay, of course, is a very popular wide receiver amongst Giant fans in free agency, and maybe the Giants will be able to get him. And if your hopes are on Allen Robinson, having another wide receiver in the field only heightens the chances of you getting one of them. So we'll see what happens there in free agency, but I would guess, unless he's franchise tagged, there's a good chance that Kenny Golladay will actually test the market in free agency, giving the Giants another option there at the wide receiver spot. But where this really could potentially impact the New York Giants, and we're going to have to wait and see how the draft board plays out, because maybe the Lions trade, with the Jets or something, they get their pick, even though I don't think they'd ever get a pick near that high. This is now more than likely one less team that will be taking a wide receiver, which I think we all agree is our biggest need at this point in time. And a lot of Giants fans fear that one of the top 3 wide receivers will not get to us. Well, you're starting to hear rumors. Things are starting to trickle out of what teams are looking for in this year's draft. The Bengals said their number 1 priority this year is to protect Joe Burrow. If that's the case, there's a strong chance that they could take a tackle at 5. If Sewell doesn't get to them, maybe 2 tackles go in the top 5. There's a number of prospects that could go there. Now you're hearing the Lions, more than likely, you would assume, are going to go out and draft a quarterback with that number 7 overall selection. And if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 7, it's almost a certainty that the Giants will be getting one of those 3 wide receivers that drop in their lap. The 2 teams picking in front of us, the Dallas Cowboys, have 3 great receivers as is. Denver has 3 very good receivers as is as well. They spent a high draft pick on Judy, KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton. So I don't think either one of those 2 teams will be taking a wide receiver. And yeah, it's looking more and more likely that one of the 3 between Waddle, Chase, and of course Smith will fall to the New York Giants. And I already thought that was the case to begin with, but this only increases the probability. We're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. Of course, the draft isn't, we still got 3 months to play all this out, but it is big news in the NFL world as the Detroit Lions have announced that they will officially be looking to move on from Matt Stafford. And now the next question becomes is, where does he end up? I think a lot of us saw this writing on the wall, especially when you bring in a new head coach. And if you're Stafford, you're probably looking for an opportunity, and that's why you agreed on this, to try to compete for a Super Bowl. He sees that the Lions are in rebuild mode, and he's not getting any younger. He wants an opportunity to win a championship, and we'll see where he ends up. And if he actually does get that opportunity, we'll see if the Lions do the right thing by him. But some of those teams that I mentioned, I think he could go there and compete. And I do think this is nothing but good news in terms of the draft for the New York Giants. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.